The police officer checked my daughter-in-law's driver's license, then took me aside and said, "Ma'am, I need you to listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Do not go back to her house. Find a safe place." I froze. "Why?" He hesitated for a moment. "I can't explain right now. This is something terrible." Then he handed me a piece of paper. I opened it, and there I learned the truth that left me in shock. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge. I want to know how far it has reached. A tall, serious-looking police officer approached. The nameplate on his uniform read Miller. He tapped gently on the window, a slow but authoritative gesture. Caroline, my daughter-in-law, rolled down the window and forced a smile that I immediately recognized as fake. "Good afternoon." "What's wrong, officer?" Her voice sounded sweet, but I could clearly hear the tension seeping into every word. "Car registration, miss," Miller replied, his voice deep and even, without a hint of emotion. Caroline, flustered, rummaged through her elegant Chanel handbag. Her hands were shaking so much that she dropped a credit card and a wad of shopping receipts onto the car floor. I watched her in silence, my heart growing heavier by the second. Normally, Caroline was always so self-assured. Every gesture exuded elegance, but right now she seemed clumsy, like a child caught doing something forbidden. Miller took the driver's license from Caroline's hand and examined it closely. He frowned slightly, as if he'd noticed something odd. He asked a few more questions, his voice still calm but sharp. "Where are you headed? Is it a long trip?" Caroline answered dismissively, in an impatient tone. "I'm just taking my mother-in-law to my house. What's it to you?" Sitting beside her, I felt the tension in the air. Caroline had never spoken to anyone that way, much less a stranger. Miller instructed her to pull the car over and then asked her to get out. "Please, step out for a moment," he said, in a tone that allowed for no refusal. I looked in the rearview mirror, and my heart sped up when I realized another patrol car had stopped behind us without my noticing. Everything was happening too fast, too suddenly, to be processed. "We need you to come with us to the nearest precinct to verify some information," Miller told Caroline. "It won't take long." Caroline scowled and tried to protest. "But I have to take my mother." Before she could finish, Miller interrupted her firmly. "It's procedure." A female officer then appeared. Politely but firmly, she invited Caroline to follow her. She reluctantly agreed, but not before turning to me and saying hurriedly, "Mom, wait for me for a moment. I'll be right out." I nodded, trying to manage a smile to calm myself, though inside I felt a whirlwind. When Caroline's silhouette disappeared inside the squad car, Miller turned to me suddenly. He leaned in so close I could see the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. His voice dropped to a whisper that seemed afraid of being overheard. "Ma'am, listen to me carefully. Do not go back to the house. No matter what happens, find a safe place." I froze. His words hit me like a hammer blow to the chest. Before I could react, he quickly slipped a small piece of paper, folded in 4, into the palm of my hand. He glanced fleetingly toward the patrol car where Caroline was, then looked me directly in the eyes. His gaze was sharp, full of warning. "Keep this safe. Don't let anyone see it." I clutched the paper tightly, feeling its corners dig into my skin. My heart was no longer beating normally. It was pounding with such force it felt like it wanted to break out of my chest and escape. Just a few minutes ago, I was sitting silently in the passenger seat as the car sped down the endless freeway. Beside me, Caroline was at the wheel, her long, slender hands gripping it tightly, her eyes shining as if she were lost in the story she couldn't stop telling. Her clear, enthusiastic voice spoke of an upcoming work trip combined with a vacation at some beachfront resort. "Mom, this place is gorgeous. The ocean is blue. The sand is white. If you go with me, you'll love it," she said with a smile so radiant it seemed to erase the scorching sun coming through the window. I nodded as I listened, though inside I felt a strange, hard-to-describe weight. Caroline had always been a lively girl, capable of lightening any situation. She gave me a ton of instructions, from feeding Mittens, her cat, at the exact time, to watering the precious orchids on the balcony. "Remember to water them every other day. Don't let them dry out, poor things," she repeated over and over, as if I were a child who needed to be reminded of everything. I just smiled and replied with short phrases, but inside me, doubts were growing. Lately, I had started to feel that something wasn't right, though I couldn't put a name to it. The freeway was deserted. The only sounds were the car's engine and Caroline's sparkling voice. I glanced at the speedometer, the needle climbing to 75, then 80 miles per hour. I felt a knot in my chest. "Caroline, slow down. This road is dangerous," I said, my voice soft but filled with concern. She shot me a mischievous look and laughed. "It's nothing, Mom. I'm used to it. Don't worry." Her smile was radiant, but to me it seemed more like a mask hiding something. Before I could think further, blue and red lights began to flash in the distance, cutting my thoughts short. The siren echoed in the quiet air like a sharp knife. A highway patrol car appeared and signaled for us to pull over. What a pain. Caroline clicked her tongue, annoyed. She braked abruptly, and the car jolted, nearly throwing me forward. I clung to the armrest, trying to stay calm, though a growing unease enveloped me. My mind began to travel back in time, taking me to the days I once believed were a paradise. Before everything came crashing down like a living hell, I closed my eyes, trying to breathe deeply. But the memories of Daniel, of Caroline, of those happy days I thought would last forever, returned as clear and painful as blades in my heart. In those years, I felt so proud when the Walker hotel chain, which I had built myself, began to turn a profit. From a small motel on the outskirts of Los Angeles, I had turned it into a luxury brand where wealthy people from all over came to enjoy impeccable service. I worked tirelessly from a young age, when Daniel was just a wobbly toddler clinging to my skirts, until he grew into an intelligent and noble young man. Once the business was stable, I decided to step back, leave the management in the hands of my trusted team, and dedicate myself to my family, to Daniel, the greatest joy of my life. Daniel, my only son, was the light of my life. He resembled his father, my husband who passed away long ago, in his radiant smile and bright eyes. But Daniel also had a tenderness that I was always proud to have passed on to him. When Daniel introduced me to Caroline, she won me over from the first glance. Caroline was beautiful, with her long, shiny black hair and her voice as sweet as honey. "Mom, this is Caroline, the woman I want to marry," Daniel said, taking her hand firmly, his eyes full of love. I looked at Caroline, saw her smile shyly, and thought, "Oh, my son is truly lucky." I was wrong. Daniel and Caroline's wedding was a luxurious event, like a dazzling dream in the heart of Los Angeles. I spared no expense, from the bouquets of white roses imported from France to the symphony orchestra playing Canon in D, as Caroline walked down the aisle in her glittering wedding gown. All my friends, business partners, and even old colleagues from my business school days were there, raising their glasses to bless the couple. Caroline hugged me tightly after the ceremony, whispering, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for everything." I squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of that soft hand, and thought I had gained another daughter. After the wedding, Daniel and Caroline moved into a luxurious apartment in the city center. That apartment, with large windows overlooking the bustling square, was my gift for them to start their new life together. But every weekend, they would drive to my house, a smaller but cozy home in the suburbs. Those dinners were the most precious time for me. Daniel would sit across from me, telling funny stories from his job at the law firm, making Caroline and me laugh until our stomachs hurt. "Mom, today I almost spilled coffee on a multi-million-dollar contract. Good thing my boss didn't see me." Daniel would laugh loudly, his eyes shining. Caroline was always attentive, making the cheesecake I loved with her own hands, placing it in front of me with a sweet smile. "Mom, try it. I made it exactly according to the recipe you taught me." In those moments, I believed I was the happiest woman in the world. I had a successful career, a loving son, and a daughter-in-law I considered my own. One windy afternoon, as we were sitting on my porch, I said to Caroline, "Honey, I don't wish for anything more. As long as you two are happy, I feel fulfilled." Caroline took my hand then, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I just want to always be by Daniel's side and yours." And then came that fateful night, like a storm that sweeps away everything you love. The phone rang in the middle of the night, insistent, furious, as if trying to tear through the darkness. I shot up, my hands trembling, and answered. A police officer's cold voice came through the line. Mrs. Walker, we regret to inform you that your son, Daniel Walker's car, has been in an accident on the freeway. He did not survive. I don't remember how I screamed. I only know that when Caroline and I arrived at the accident scene, it was pouring rain, and Daniel's car was just a mangled heap of iron at the bottom of a ravine. The blue and red lights of the ambulances flickered, casting ghostly reflections on the wet pavement. I stood there, rooted to the spot, watching the paramedics lift a white sheet. Daniel's face appeared, pale but peaceful, as if he were asleep. I screamed and fell to my knees, feeling the entire world crumble beneath me. Caroline hugged me tightly, crying inconsolably. It can't be, Daniel. Mom! I clung to her, two broken women hugging in the freezing rain, as if we only had each other to bear the unbearable pain. Daniel's funeral was held on a day of endless rain. I stood before my son's photo, my hands trembling as I lit each candle, but my eyes were clouded with tears. Caroline was by my side, her face swollen, receiving condolences from those present on my behalf. Mrs. Walker, we're so sorry, they said, but those words couldn't ease the pain inside me. Caroline took my hand and whispered, Mom, I'll always be with you, we'll get through this together. I nodded, believing she was suffering as much as I was, that together we could overcome this loss. From that day on, my world was reduced to Caroline and me. I treated her like a daughter, gave her all the love I had left. I even thought about putting part of my assets in her name, some of the smaller hotels in the Walker chain, as a way to compensate for the pain of losing Daniel. You deserve it, I told her one night, as we ate the beef stew that Daniel used to love. She nodded, her eyes moist, and I could feel the sincerity in her every word. I thought that although I had lost Daniel, I still had Caroline, the daughter-in-law I trusted to share the rest of my days with. Time passed, and the pain slowly subsided, though it never completely disappeared. I told myself it was fate, that life had cruelly taken my beloved son from me. I started to find solace in small things, tending to the backyard garden, talking with Caroline about old memories, or just sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Caroline continued to visit me frequently, sometimes with boxes of homemade cheesecake, other times with a bouquet of fresh flowers from the market. Mom, I want you to be happy, she would say, and I believed her. I believed she was also trying to mend her broken heart, just like me. But those moments, now, with Officer Miller's note still burning in my hand, came back to my mind like a cruel mockery of fate. I took a deep breath, and with trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. A few hastily scrawled lines appeared, as if copied in a rush from a secret notebook. The words seemed to dance before my eyes, each one a hammer blow to my head. It was a detailed plan, cold to the point of being macabre. Cut the brakes on Daniel's car, stage the scene to look like a fatal traffic accident, and then claim the life insurance. At the bottom of the paper, a note made my heart stop. Life insurance. Sole beneficiary, Carolyn Rios. I looked up at Miller, my eyes blurry but trying to maintain a shred of calm. It can't be, I murmured, my voice breaking. Caroline, she couldn't have done that. Daniel was her husband. She loved Daniel. But even as I said it, a part of me began to doubt. The image of Caroline, with her sweet smile and tender words, warped in my mind, like a torn portrait, revealing the terrible truth behind it. Miller sat across from me, his expression a mix of compassion and resolve. Mrs. Walker, I understand how difficult this is, he said slowly. But we've been monitoring Caroline for months. Your son's death was not an accident. He paused, as if to give me time to process that devastating truth. We have evidence, recordings, messages. She planned everything with another man, someone connected to a criminal network. I shook my head, not because I didn't believe him, but because I didn't want to. My throat felt bitter and tight, as if an invisible hand were squeezing it. I remembered Caroline's face at Daniel's funeral, swollen from crying, her arms clinging to me as if we were two people in the same tragedy, crying out together for the loss of our loved one. How could she fake it like that? How could she stand before Daniel's picture, in front of me, and weave such a perfect act? Miller continued, his voice low but sharp, like a knife cutting through the fog in my mind. And now, you are the next target. According to the plan we overheard, you will be alone in Caroline's apartment while she travels with a colleague to create an alibi. This man, her lover, will come and push you down the stairs. Everything will be staged to look like a regrettable accident of a frail, elderly person. A chill ran down my spine. It made me shiver. I imagined myself tumbling down the stairs, the cold wooden steps in Caroline's luxurious apartment. And again, her playing the grieving daughter-in-law, crying in front of a crowd, while silently counting the insurance money. The thought made me want to scream, but I remained seated, gripping the arms of the chair, trying not to fall apart. Miller looked me squarely in the eye, his gaze seeming to want to transmit some strength to me. "We need your cooperation to catch him in the act," he said. "But first, you must get away from her immediately. If you stay with Caroline, your life will be in danger." He paused and added in a softer voice, "I know you're in shock, but we don't have much time." I don't know why, but in that moment, I acted without thinking. I clutched my chest, gasping, my forehead beaded with cold sweat. A part of me knew it was all an act, a way for me to get out of Caroline's sight without her suspecting. But the fear strangling my chest was real. I felt my world collapsing, as if I were losing not just Daniel, but also the last bit of trust in what I had considered my family. Miller understood instantly. He turned to his fellow officers with a resolute voice. "Quick! She's showing signs of a heart attack." Those present were immediately alarmed. I heard shouts in the distance, and then Caroline's figure appeared, running toward me, her face contorted with worry or with the fear that her plan was being discovered. "Mom, what's wrong with you? Let me take you to the hospital," she yelled, trying to push through the officers to get to me. But Miller raised a hand to stop her, his voice as hard as steel. "No, there are still procedures to resolve. We'll take her in the police ambulance." Caroline wanted to protest, but an officer quickly moved her aside. They helped me into another vehicle. My legs felt like lead. The siren blared, tearing through the air, and the vehicle took off, heading to what I hoped was a safe place. Just before the car door slammed shut, I caught a glimpse of Caroline's eyes through the crack. In that look, I noticed a strange mixture, worry, nervousness, and a flash of annoyance she failed to hide. I realized in that instant that in those eyes, there wasn't a single shred of affection for me. They were cold, like the gaze of a predator calculating its next move. The patrol car stopped in front of a low-rise building with a dimly lit neon sign that read, 7th Precinct Police Station. It wasn't the hospital as I had thought, but a cold place filled with the smell of burnt coffee and the metallic clatter of a typewriter echoing from some corner. I was taken to a small room. The white light of a fluorescent bulb was blinding. I sat on a hard wooden chair, my hands still clenched, as if letting go would make me lose the last of my strength to face the truth that was slowly revealing itself. I was still stunned by Miller's words, by that piece of paper with sentences that pierced my heart like knives. Caroline, the daughter-in-law I once considered a daughter, who cried with me before Daniel's coffin, now appeared in my mind as a stranger, with the face of betrayal. I tried to breathe deeply, but each breath was heavy, as if the very air in that room was crushing my chest. Miller entered, followed by 2 more investigators, a middle-aged man with piercing eyes and a young woman with a stern expression. He placed a small tape recorder on the table, an old-fashioned device I had only seen in police movies. "Mrs. Walker," he said in a grave, authoritative voice, "you need to hear this. It will help you better understand what's happening." I nodded, though inside I just wanted to run away, to go back to the days when everything was simpler, when Daniel was still alive, when I still believed Caroline was part of my family. He pressed the play button. A voice came on, clear, icy, and so familiar it made me shudder. It was Caroline's voice. "My mother-in-law is going to be home alone. You just have to come over, give her a little push. Everyone will think the clueless old lady just slipped." I felt my blood run cold. That voice, which had once been sweet when it called me Mom, now sounded like the whisper of a venomous snake. A deep, unfamiliar male voice responded, "When this is over, we'll go far away to Costa Rica. I need the money now. Those guys are putting too much pressure on me." I covered my face, and tears slid silently down my wrinkled cheeks. This was not the Caroline I knew, not the girl who made me cheesecake, who sat beside me telling stories about Daniel. Miller stopped the recording. His eyes looked at me with a mix of compassion and firmness. "That man is Jesse Thorne," he said, "your daughter-in-law's lover." He pushed a thick file with a worn cover toward me. I opened it with trembling hands, and the first thing I saw were photos taken in secret. A man with an angular face, messy hair, standing in front of a seedy bar, talking to men who looked like thugs. "Jesse is a link in a drug trafficking ring we've been investigating for some time," Miller continued. "He's in debt up to his eyeballs, and he needed a lot of money to escape. Caroline took advantage of that." I turned another page in the file, and my heart sank when I saw a copy of Daniel's life insurance policy. The beneficiary's name was printed in bold, clear, and obvious. Caroline Rios. I remembered the day Daniel signed that contract, when he smiled and told me, "Mom, I want to make sure that if anything happens to me, Caroline won't have to worry." I had nodded, proud of my son's thoughtfulness. Now, that thoughtfulness had become part of a cruel plan. "We have enough reason to believe that the accident that took your son's life was staged," Miller said slowly, each word landing like a hammer blow on my mind. The image of Daniel's wrecked car flashed before my eyes, along with Caroline's fake crying at the funeral. I remembered how she hugged me, tears streaming down her face, but now I wondered if those tears were ever real. "They planned it a long time ago," Miller continued, "and now you are the next target." I was breathless, unable to speak. The image of Daniel, with his radiant smile and kind eyes, replayed over and over in my mind, superimposed on the ruthless truth I had just heard. I wanted to scream, to deny everything, but deep down, I knew Miller was right. All the pieces were starting to fit, from Caroline's rush to take me to her house, to the uneasy look I saw on her face just before I got out of the car. Miller looked at me, and his eyes seemed to want to convey some strength. "We can't act without proof at the very moment they try to kill you," he said. "You are the key, Mrs. Walker. If you agree to cooperate, we'll catch them both." He paused and added, in a softer tone, "I know this is very difficult, but we need you." I lifted my head and wiped the tears with the back of my hand. In that instant, I felt a small flame ignite in my chest amidst the soul-crushing pain. I was no longer the weak, elderly mother lost in grief over her son's death. I was a mother who was going to fight for justice for Daniel. "I'll do it," I said, my voice short but firm, as if I were declaring war on fate itself. They took me to a small room, hidden deep within the precinct's facilities. It was a simple room, just an old iron bed, a wooden table with a chair, and a tiny window covered by a thick curtain. But for me, it was a temporary refuge, a place where I could regain my composure after the storm of truth that had just hit me. I sat on the bed, my hands still shaking, feeling as if the entire world were teetering beneath my feet. The next morning, the weak sunlight filtered through the curtain, waking me from a sleepless night. I didn't remember how much I had managed to sleep. I only knew that every time I closed my eyes, Daniel's image returned, with his radiant smile and kind eyes, mixed with Caroline's cold voice on the recording. A young female officer, with her hair in a high ponytail and kind eyes, came in with a phone in her hand. "Mrs. Walker," she said in a soft but serious voice, "you should answer. Your daughter-in-law has called almost 10 times since early this morning." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. The phone, cold in my hands, was a reminder that I was entering a dangerous game. I pressed the answer button, and Caroline's voice came on the other end, laced with fake concern. "Mom, how are you? Are you okay? Why haven't you called me back?" Her voice was high-pitched, as if trying to hide something. I could picture her face, with that forced smile I once believed was sincere. According to the plan Miller had given me earlier, I responded in a weak voice, like someone who had just recovered from a serious illness. "I'm a little tired, Caroline. The doctor said I need to rest for a few more days. When I recover, I'll come back." I deliberately dragged out each word, making my voice tremble so Caroline would believe I suspected nothing. But inside, I felt a boiling rage, mixed with a pain I couldn't soothe. The daughter-in-law I had loved, whom I had considered a daughter, was now the one planning to take my life. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard Caroline sigh, an annoyed sound, as if she were trying to contain her frustration. "Damn it, the plan is so delayed," she muttered, thinking I couldn't hear her. But I heard every word clearly, and each one was another stab to my heart. She quickly added, her voice sweet again, "Rest up, Mom. I'll come see you as soon as I can." Then she hung up without letting me reply. I put the phone down with shaking hands. Miller, who was in the corner of the room recording the call, nodded in satisfaction. "She's starting to lose her cool," he said, his voice grave but confident. "The more desperate she gets, the easier it will be for her to make mistakes." He sat across from me, placing a cup of hot water on the table, as if to help me calm down. "You did very well, Mrs. Walker. Keeping that tone will make her believe everything is still under control." But I didn't feel like I controlled anything. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, and one false step would send me plunging into the void. I looked at Miller, searching his eyes for some comfort. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Are you sure we can stop her?" Miller nodded, his gaze firm. "We're not just relying on you," he said. "Our surveillance team has been following Caroline and Jesse for a while. They've just reported new conversations, and everything is unfolding as we predicted." He played another recording from a small device. Jesse's voice came on, full of tension and panic. "Why did everything turn out like this? That old woman should have been in the house since yesterday." Caroline's voice replied, trying to stay calm but unable to hide her annoyance. "Calm down, Jesse. My mother is in the hospital, but I'll find a way to bring her home soon." "Just do what the plan says, Jesse," she shouted. "I can't wait any longer, Caroline. The creditors are after me. If we don't get the money, we're both dead." The recording ended, leaving a heavy silence in the room. I sat still, listening to every word, my heart as tense as a string. Every phrase from Caroline and Jesse was another stab, cutting deep into the memories I had treasured. I remembered the times Caroline came to see me, bringing boxes of cheesecake or bouquets of fresh flowers, always saying, "Mom, I just want you to be happy." Now I realized it had all been part of an act, a way to keep me under her control, so I wouldn't suspect anything until it was too late. Miller continued, his voice calm but sharp. "We just received information from an inside source. Jesse's old office, a small warehouse on the outskirts, was just hit by a group of thugs. He's really cornered." He looked at me, his gaze gauging if I still had the strength to continue. "Desperation will make them act recklessly. This is our chance, Mrs. Walker. If we set the trap at the right moment, they will fall on their own." I nodded, though inside I was trembling. The idea of facing Caroline, of playing the role of an unsuspecting mother-in-law, felt like walking on a path full of thorns. But I knew I had no other choice. For Daniel, for justice, I had to go on. "What do I have to do?" I asked, my voice low but determined. Miller smiled slightly, as if sensing my resolve. "Continue playing the weak mother-in-law who trusts her daughter-in-law," he said. "We will arrange everything to ensure your safety, but the most important thing is that you must remain calm. Caroline cannot suspect that you know the truth." I nodded, but inside I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. That afternoon, in the small room at the precinct, Miller sat across from me and spread a floor plan of Caroline's apartment on the old wooden table. The hand-drawn lines, from the spacious living room to the wooden staircase leading to the second floor, appeared before me like a dangerous maze. He pointed to several spots on the plan, his voice grave but firm. "Mrs. Walker, we will install hidden cameras here, here, and here." He marked 3 locations: the corner of the living room, the hallway leading to the back door, and the foot of the stairs. The place where, according to Caroline's cruel plan, I was supposed to have an accident. "The ambush team will be hidden on the ground floor and in the backyard. You just need to act exactly as we discussed." I looked at the plan, my heart pounding in my chest. The idea of entering Caroline's apartment, of playing the part of a trusting, unsuspecting mother-in-law, chilled me to the bone. But I knew it was the only chance to unmask the truth, to claim justice for Daniel. Though I was trembling inside, I nodded with determination. "All right, you'll call her." Miller handed me a secure phone, assuring me the call would be recorded and monitored. I took a deep breath, trying to contain the wave of emotions flooding me. When I dialed Caroline's number, my hand shook so much I nearly dropped the phone. 2 rings, and then her voice came on, still sweet, but now all I heard was falseness. "Mom, are you calling for something? Are you okay?" I made my voice deliberately weak, like someone just recovering from an illness. "Caroline, I'm feeling a little better. If you need, I can go to your place to look after the cat." I paused, pretending to have difficulty breathing, to make her believe I was still weak and easy to manipulate. On the other end, there was a second of silence, as if Caroline was weighing something. Then her voice burst out, full of feigned joy. "Really, Mom? I'm so glad. I'll come pick you up tomorrow then. I worry so much about you, you know that." I could picture the smile on her face, the same smile I once believed was sincere and now sent shivers down my spine. "Okay, honey," I replied, my voice deliberately trembling. "I'll be waiting." After hanging up, I looked at Miller, feeling as though I had just crossed a dangerous line. He nodded, a look of satisfaction in his eyes. "Very good, Mrs. Walker. The fish has taken the bait. Now we execute the plan." The next day, everything unfolded like a carefully rehearsed play. I was taken to a nearby hospital for a fake discharge procedure. A nurse, actually an undercover police officer, pushed me in a wheelchair to the exit, where Caroline was already waiting. She wore an elegant blue dress, held a small clutch in her hand, and wouldn't stop talking. "Mom, I was worried sick. Now that I see you've recovered, I feel at ease." She leaned in to hug me, but I felt the falseness in that embrace, cold, with no warmth at all. I smiled weakly and replied, "Thank you, Caroline. I also want to go home to be comfortable." I got into the car and sat in the passenger seat, discreetly looking in the rearview mirror. An unmarked civilian police car kept a safe distance behind us. Its presence calmed me a little, but my heart was pounding, as if it knew I was entering the lion's den. Caroline drove, chattering about her upcoming work trip. "Mom, I'll only be gone for a few days, but with you taking care of the house, I'll be at ease. Mittens must miss you so much." I nodded, trying to keep my face serene, but inside I just wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her about everything she had done to Daniel. As soon as we arrived at Caroline's apartment, the cat, Mittens, ran to me, rubbing against my legs and meowing as if to welcome me. The apartment was still as bright and tidy as ever, with sunlight streaming through the large windows, illuminating the impeccable white sofa and the orchids on the balcony. But today, this place was no longer a home. It was a stage where I was about to play the lead role in a life-or-death drama. Caroline was hastily checking her passport and plane ticket, speaking quickly. "Mom, stay here for a few days to help me out. Mitten's food is in the kitchen cabinet, and the orchids on the balcony need watering every 2 days. I've written everything down in the notebook." She pointed to a small notebook on the kitchen table, then looked at me, smiling with an expression I now recognized as fake. "Rest up, Mom. I have to get ready to leave." I nodded, trying to smile. "Go to work without worry. I'll take care of everything at home." Caroline bent down to hug Mittens, kissing her forehead affectionately, as if she were truly someone who loved animals. But I knew that was just part of the act. She dragged her suitcase to the door, looked at me, and waved. "I'm leaving, Mom. I'll call you often." The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the spacious apartment, feeling like I was standing on the border between life and death. I sat on the sofa, my hands freezing. The house suddenly felt immense and terrifying, like a trap waiting to spring shut. Night fell, blanketing Caroline's apartment in a cold silence, as if the whole world were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The dim yellow light from the lamp in the corner of the living room cast my shadow on the empty wall, elongating and distorting it like a blurred version of myself. Sitting on the sofa, I squeezed my hands to keep them from trembling. The cat, Mittens, after eating, had curled up in a corner, sleeping soundly. Her soft breathing was the only sound that broke the silence. But for me, each tick-tock of the clock on the wall resonated like a hammer hitting my chest, reminding me that time was moving forward and the decisive moment was approaching. I knew that from the hidden corners of this apartment, the police's hidden cameras were rolling, recording every moment. On the ground floor, the assault team was in position, ready to act. Miller had reassured me before he left. "Mrs. Walker, we'll be right here. Just stay calm. Everything will be fine. But how could I be calm when I knew that tonight a predator would enter, and I would be the bait in the trap? To keep from sinking into fear, I picked up a travel magazine from the table and randomly flipped through the pages. There were pictures of blue beaches and luxurious resorts, but I couldn't concentrate. My hands were shaking, making the pages rustle. I thought of Daniel, of my son's smile, of how he used to sit right on this sofa, telling jokes that made Caroline and me roar with laughter. Now, this apartment, once filled with laughter, had become a dangerous stage, where I had to face the betrayal of someone I had considered a daughter. I forced myself to take a deep breath, telling myself I had to be strong. For Daniel, I whispered, as a reminder to myself. I couldn't let fear overcome me. I couldn't let Caroline and her lover win. But with every passing second, I felt the air in the room grow thicker, pressing on my chest. I looked at the clock, almost midnight. My heart was pounding, as if trying to escape my chest. Suddenly, a very soft click came from the back door, so faint that if I hadn't been paying attention, I would have missed it. I held my breath, my entire body tensing. That sound, though slight, thundered in my head. He had arrived. Jesse. I could feel his presence, like a ghost gliding silently into the apartment. Through the decorative mirror on the wall, I saw a figure dressed in dark clothes, wearing a cap that covered most of his face. He carefully took off his shoes, placing them on the floor without a sound, and advanced slowly toward me. I remained motionless, pretending to be absorbed in the magazine, but all my senses were on high alert, tracking his every step. His breath brushed the back of my neck, cold and heavy, like the breath of death. I felt his rough hand touch the arm of the sofa, then move slowly toward my shoulder. My heart was beating so hard I feared he could hear it. I wanted to scream, to run, but I knew this was the decisive moment. I had to stay. I had to let the trap spring shut. Just then, all the lights in the house flashed on, bright as the midday Sunday. A shout echoed, shattering the silence. "Police! Freeze!" Jesse jumped. His hand shot back from the sofa, as if he had been electrocuted. He spun around, trying to escape toward the back door, but two police officers burst from the hallway, swift as lightning. A loud thud shook the room as they tackled him to the ground, and the metallic click of handcuffs filled the air. I shot up. I scrambled back into a corner of the room, my whole body trembling. A young female officer, the same one who had handed me the phone that morning, rushed to my side, put her hand on my shoulder, and reassured me with a firm voice. "Mrs. Walker, you're safe now. It's all over." But I couldn't respond. I just stood there, my eyes fixed on Jesse, the man who was handcuffed, screaming in desperation. It wasn't my fault. She was the one who put me up to it. Caroline told me to do it. I didn't want to. His voice was breaking, like that of a cornered animal. I looked at him, a man with an angular face and eyes wide with fear. This was the one who had participated in the plan to kill Daniel, the one who had tried to take my life just for money. But instead of rage, all I felt was a deep ache, as if my heart were breaking all over again. Caroline, the person I had loved, had dragged me into this nightmare. And now, seeing Jesse being led away, I knew the cruel hunt was over, but the wound inside me was still open, bleeding without end. That night I was taken back to the police station. The small room with the cold white fluorescent light was familiar now, but it did nothing to calm the emptiness inside me. I sat on the hard wooden chair, my hands clasped, trying not to let the wave of emotions overwhelm me. Jesse had been arrested, the trap had closed, but I knew it wasn't the end yet. The full truth about Daniel's death, about Caroline's betrayal, was still waiting to be revealed. Miller led me down a narrow hallway to another room, where a one-way mirror looked into an interrogation room. On the other side, Jesse was sitting, devoid of the ferocity I had imagined when I saw him break into the apartment. Now he was just a defeated man, sweat running down his forehead and his wild eyes fixed on the floor. Under the cold white light, he looked small, weak, like a trapped animal. Miller stood beside me and said in a grave, serious voice, "Mrs. Walker, we're going to let you listen to his statement, but prepare yourself, it won't be easy." He signaled to an investigator in the room to play the recording, the dialogue between Jesse and Caroline that I had already partly heard. Caroline's voice came on. cold and cutting. My mother-in-law is going to be home alone. You just have to go in. Give her a little push. Everyone will think the crazy old lady just slipped. Jesse's dry, easy laugh responded. When this is over, we'll go far away, to Costa Rica. I felt a shiver run down my spine, as if I were hearing it for the first time. But now, that voice didn't just hurt me. It also ignited a fury I never knew I had. Jesse, sitting in the interrogation, hung his head when the recording ended. He let out a dry, hollow laugh, as if trying to hide his fear. "So you know everything then?" he said, his voice broken. The investigator, a tall man with a gaze as sharp as a knife, nodded. "We know enough to put you in prison for life, Jesse. But if you cooperate, maybe we can consider a reduced sentence." He looked up, a faint flicker of hope in his eyes, and began to confess. He told them about the huge debt to a gang of traffickers, people who wouldn't hesitate to kill to collect what they were owed. "I had no way out," he said, his voice trembling. "Caroline came to see me and said she had a way to help me get rid of those creditors. She assured me that if we killed Daniel and collected the life insurance, we'd have enough money to start over somewhere else." I stood behind the glass, listening to every word, feeling as if my heart were being torn apart. Caroline, the girl I once considered a daughter, had planned to kill her own husband, my son, just for money. Jesse continued, his voice growing faster, as if he needed to get it all out to free himself from the weight. He confessed the location where they hid the drugs, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Los Angeles where he had worked before. He gave the names of the gang leaders, the smuggling routes across the border he had been involved in. Every word was another stab, but at the same time, it brought a strange sense of relief. The truth, as disgusting as it was coming to light, and I knew that Daniel, though gone, would be vindicated. I remained there, behind the glass, tears streaming silently down my cheeks. I wasn't crying for Jesse, or for his failure, but for Daniel, for my son's smile, for the dreams he never had the chance to fulfill. I thought of all the times Daniel had held Caroline's hand, the tenderness in his gaze, and I wondered how she could have faked so much love while secretly planning to destroy it all. A few days later, as I was sitting in my house, the evening news came on the old television. The FBI successfully dismantled a large-scale drug trafficking network in Los Angeles, the anchor announced, arresting several key leaders and seizing a large quantity of drugs. The names Jesse had given appeared on the screen, along with images of a cordoned-off warehouse and bags full of drugs being loaded into police trucks. I looked at the screen and felt a little warmth seep into my frozen heart. Justice, though late, had begun to be served. Just then, the phone rang, startling me. I answered, and Miller's firm, confident voice came through. "Mrs. Walker, we just arrested Caroline at the airport. She was trying to catch the first flight to Spain after being unable to contact Jesse. We caught her right as she was checking in. It's all over." I hung up the phone in silence, feeling as if the last veil of lies had just fallen. On the day of the trial, the sky was covered with gray clouds. A fine drizzle was falling, as if nature itself were weeping for what I had lost. The police escorted me through the crowd of reporters swarming the courthouse, the flashes of their cameras exploding like small bolts of lightning tearing through the air. "Mrs. Walker, how do you feel?" one of the journalists shouted, thrusting a microphone at me. I didn't respond, just lowered my head and quickened my pace, feeling that every movement was an effort not to collapse. My hands clutched an old handkerchief, a gift Daniel had given me for one of my birthdays, as if by doing so I could hold on to a little of his warmth. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy, suffocating. The light coming through the high windows was blocked by the rain, making the room feel even colder. I sat on the witness bench, my trembling hands resting on my lap, my eyes fixed on the dock where Caroline and Jesse stood. Jesse kept his head down, his shoulders shaking repeatedly, like someone who had already accepted his fate. But Caroline, she had changed so much I could barely recognize her. The face that was once radiant and beautiful was now gaunt, as pale as a sheet of paper, with sunken, dark-circled eyes staring blankly into space, as if searching for an invisible escape. I watched her, and for a moment, I saw again the girl who hugged me at Daniel's funeral, who made me cheesecake, who called me Mom, but now I only saw a stranger. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with a voice as sharp as a knife, stood to read the indictment. Each crime was listed clearly, and every word fell on my mind like a hammer blow. Premeditated murder, insurance fraud, participation in a criminal organization. He presented the evidence. From the recordings I had heard at the precinct to the copy of Daniel's life insurance policy, with Caroline's name highlighted in bold like an undeniable accusation. The recording was played on a large screen in the courtroom, and Caroline's cold voice boomed. "We have to act fast. The insurance money can't wait." I closed my eyes, trying to contain the pain crushing my chest. But the image of Daniel, with his kind smile, appeared vividly in my mind. Caroline's lawyer, a young woman with a sharp, firm voice, stood to defend her. "Your Honor, my client was coerced," she said in a convincing tone. "Caroline Rios is a victim of manipulation by Jesse Thorne, a professional criminal. She had no other choice." Hearing her, I felt the blood boil in my veins. Coerced? How could someone who was coerced plan in such detail to cut the brakes on Daniel's car or try to push me down the stairs? But the prosecutor didn't let her continue. He played another recording, one I had never heard. Caroline's voice, this time without any sweetness, sounded urgent. "Jesse, you have to do it quickly. If the old woman dies, we'll have everything. The insurance, the properties, everything." A chill ran down my spine, as if I myself were being pushed into the void. Caroline, sitting in the dock, broke into heartbreaking sobs when the recording ended. She screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. "I just wanted a better future. I had no choice. You people don't understand what I've had to live through." But her cries aroused no compassion in me. I only saw someone trying to justify her crimes, someone who had taken Daniel from me, who had stolen my trust and love. When I was called to the stand, I stood up, my legs heavy as lead. I walked slowly, feeling all eyes in the courtroom fixed on me. I stood before the judge, looked him directly in the eyes, and began to tell the whole story, from Daniel's tragic death to the suffocating ambush in Caroline's apartment. My voice was calm, but each word came from the depths of my heart, where the pain still bled. "I lost my son," I said, looking toward Caroline. "I trusted her like a daughter, but she betrayed me. She betrayed Daniel. She betrayed everything we ever had." The entire courtroom fell into absolute silence. The only sound was the drizzle hitting the windows. When I finished, I looked at Caroline one last time. She didn't dare to meet my gaze, just hung her head as tears fell to the floor. I returned to my seat feeling as though I had released a heavy burden, but also as if I had lost a part of myself. The judge, an older man with a stern look, struck the gavel and delivered the sentence. Jesse Thorne, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Caroline Rios, 30 years in prison, with confiscation of all illegal assets. The sound of the gavel echoed, firm, like a final end to the hell I had been living through. As the guards led Caroline and Jesse out of the room, Caroline turned to look at me. Her eyes were filled with hatred and desperation, as if I were the one who had pushed her into a dead end. But I just clasped my hands tightly, in silence, with my heart at peace. I felt no satisfaction, only a deep sadness, but at the same time, I knew that justice had been served. Daniel, my son, could finally rest in peace. A few months after the trial, my life began to find a new rhythm. The crazy days when I had to face Caroline's betrayal and the painful truth about Daniel's death were behind me, though they left scars in my heart that will never heal. The Walker Hotel chain, the project to which I dedicated my entire life, continued to operate normally, but I no longer had the ambition to expand it. The big dreams and plans had vanished along with Daniel. Now I just wanted to live a simple, meaningful life and contribute something good to the world as a way to honor my son. I decided to use a large part of the inheritance, which was once intended for Daniel and Caroline, to establish the Daniel Walker Foundation, an organization that supports poor and dedicated children in Los Angeles. The idea came to me one sleepless night as I sat before Daniel's small altar, looking at his photo and wondering what I could do to transform this pain into something positive. I wanted Daniel's name to be linked to good things, for my son's smile to live on in the dreams of other children. On the day of the foundation's inauguration, I organized a small ceremony in a central park downtown. The sky was clear that day, with a bright sun, as if Daniel were smiling from above. The children, in their white uniforms and with eyes full of hope, ran around the stage, laughing as they received gifts and scholarships. I stood on the stage, looking at those little faces, and felt a gentle warmth enter my frozen heart. I personally handed out each gift new notebooks, shoes with the smell of fresh leather, and bags of candy that made the children squeal with joy. One little boy, with curly hair and a radiant smile, looked at me and said, "Thank you, you're like a mom to us." His words brought a lump to my throat, tears nearly came, but I smiled, stroked his head and replied, "You're a good boy. Study hard so your mom will be proud of you." That evening, I returned to my small house, where Daniel's laughter once filled the air. I went into the kitchen and prepared a simple meal, the stew he loved so much, with the aroma of herbs and tomato filling the entire place, accompanied by a cheesecake, the kind I once taught Caroline how to make. I set the table with 2 plates, as if Daniel were still there, across from me, telling me his funny stories. I knew it was just my imagination, but the gesture helped me feel that my son was still close, as if he had never left. I went to the shelf where Daniel's photo was placed next to a candle. I lit the candle. The yellowish light illuminated my son's kind face. "Rest in peace," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I found out the truth. I did it all for you." Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they were not just of pain. They were tears of release, of knowing I didn't let Daniel go in vain. That night, I turned on the television, and the news began. The FBI has completely dismantled the illegal substance trafficking network linked to Jesse Thorne, the anchor announced. Authorities have arrested more individuals involved and destroyed the smuggling routes across the border. I looked and then turned off the television. I felt my heart lighten, as if a final weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Justice had been served, not just for Daniel, but also for the other victims of the criminal network in which Caroline and Jesse were involved. From time to time, I visit the headquarters of the Daniel Walker Foundation, where the children gather, play, and study. Their laughter, clear and innocent, fills the void in my heart. I often bring homemade food, like cheesecake or sandwiches, and sit with them to listen to their simple stories. Once, a little girl with her hair in a ponytail took my hand and asked, "Grandma, do you have any children?" I smiled, stroking her head, and replied, "I have a son, but he is in a very faraway place. Now, you all are the joy of my life." Although the wound of losing Daniel will never heal, I have found a reason to keep going. I transformed my pain into hope for other lives, for those unfortunate children full of dreams. I think of Daniel, of how he always wanted to help others, and I know that through this foundation, his spirit lives on, shining light into the places that need it most. After everything I've been through, I've come to understand that life can take away our loved ones, our trust, and even the dreams we thought were unbreakable. But justice and truth always remain. A traitor can hide for a while, but sooner or later, the mask falls. I want to leave you with a message. Be brave enough to face the truth, however painful it may be, because only by standing up can we protect what is most sacred and transform loss into strength. My pain will never disappear, but I learned to turn it into hope for others, and that is the only way Daniel and I can be at peace. The story you have just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell it to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers might be suffering in silence within their own homes? I truly wonder. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you have the courage to face everything to reclaim your own voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story can become a candle that lights the way for another. God always blesses, and I am convinced that courage will lead us to better days. Now, on the end screen, I will leave 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I am sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.